So we had a great episode 4, the Book of Boba Fett, but what will episode 5 entail? Are we getting 3 straight episodes of a fully realized full warfare Boba Fett? Find out more and our thoughts on this week's Star Wars Book of Boba Fett reviews and speculation video.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Book of Boba Fett, Chapter 5 Predictions and Speculation video. This week, we will be covering everything that we think is going to happen in the next episode of the Book of Boba Fett. So, in order to do so, we will be talking spoilers for Chapter 4. So, if you haven't seen Chapter 4, check that out and then watch our spoiler review of Chapter 4, where we talk about all the things we liked, disliked, all the everything that really goes into the minutia of what happens in Chapter 4 and all of that. So, check that video out first and watch the episode first, and then come here and check out Chapter 5 Predictions and Speculation, because we will be diving into all of those things that are teased from the end of Chapter 4. But before we do so, please hit that like button down below, subscribe to the channel for Star Wars content up to 3 days a week, maybe more depending on the schedule of the Book of Boba Fett, but we have a lot of stuff coming out for you guys, and a lot of stuff that has come out in the last few weeks that you guys want to check out. And then comment below, let us know what you thought of Chapter 4 of the Book of Boba Fett and what you think will happen in Chapter 5, whether you agree with our predictions, whether you disagree. If you have some crazy speculation that you want to throw out there, let us know down below. We'll comment back to you and let you know our thoughts on your ideas and predictions. So now to get into it. So we have two really big things to talk about in particular. I think let's start with the first one, which I would say is the state of the flashbacks, right? Because we have a big thing dropped in this episode that is really kind of just casually mentioned in dialogue by a droid. And it's that Boba's done in this back to tank session. Like all the back to tank usage that he needed, um, he's done. He's healed. So does that mean the flashbacks are gone? What can trigger the flashbacks? Is he going to get hurt again and then put back in the back to tank to have another flashback? How are we going to tie that up? Because we still, I mean, personally, I would still like to see how he knows that his armor is with Cobb Vanth, how he gets there at that point, how far in advanced is his search in the Sarlacc pit for his armor from when he sees Din get it from Cobb Vanth and then leave, and then he tracks them to the planet. I guess we can all infer that if we needed to, but I feel like this episode, chapter 4 at least, puts such an emphasis on him tracking down his armor and the importance of tracking down his armor. And he even goes, we have an entire scene in the Sarlacc that I feel like it would be kind of weird to just leave it there. Like, I feel like there needs to be a little bit more of a step, but there might not be any more flashbacks, which I'm also kind of okay with because I kind of want to get to the main narrative. So I'm kind of in the middle on this. Like I do, for my own like continuity sake in my brain, I do want to see another flashback, at least a small one, of him putting the pieces together and figuring out where his armor is. But at the same time, I'm okay with the flashbacks being over. I'm okay with finally connecting this story to the main timeline, the modern timeline, and just going for it on the bounty hunter war type thing we're gonna get here, the crime syndicate war. So anyway, what are your thoughts on possibly no more flashbacks in this show?
Um, I mean, I think there are going to be flashbacks. I just don't think they're going to be as dominant as they have been. Um, I would say, like you said in our reviews video, if you guys haven't checked already, Liam said that, this episode felt more like a 60-40, maybe even a little closer to 65-35 split between flashback and then, present day. I think what we're going to do is we're going to get an inverse of that in this episode. I think that's when we're going to fully switch over to, the present story has to be the focus. It's hard to justify 3 episodes of just pure out warfare, even if it is an escalation into that warfare. I can see 2.5 being more reasonable about it. Even if I would love to just see 3 episodes straight of just endless fighting and pikes being torn up and so many different cameos by so many bounty hunters. But, I agree. I think we do have to see Cobb Vanth. I think, Timothy Oliphant has been seen, like, sometime last year with his, Mandalorian, hair as Cobb Vanth, so it's like, he clearly did something. We don't know exactly what he did, maybe it was for something in Mando season 3, like a little cameo that he could get filmed earlier or something. I don't know. I think logistically it makes sense for it to be Book of Boba Fett. So I think we're gonna see that. I would like him to, not be like, "Oh, I found out it's finally from Cobb Vanth." I'd like the episode to just start off with him outside Mos Pelgo, outside of Freedom Town, seeing this guy, right? And he wants to do something about it, but he's also noticing the behavior of this guy. Maybe he sees from a distance Cobb Vanth kill those red, I forget what they're called, the Red Rider clan or whatever, that was mentioned in the aftermath interludes, and it's kind of tied in to his mini origin story in the season 2 premiere of Mando. So I'd like to see like Boba just have witnessed that from like a dune like he has, just be like, oh, there's that guy with my armor. And then when he sees that, he still wants his armor, but maybe he doesn't necessarily like want to like attack and kill the dude. It's more of like a wait and see. I'm like, this is interesting. This is curious. But I want that to be kind of a fake out because then I want it to draw in um, Din. Because then when he finally sees Din, Din becomes his focus, right? I think even though we see all the scenes with Cobb kind of set in a bit of a flashback, we can have Boba kind of, feel like, all right, I don't need this armor. Like, yeah, I'm getting it. He's had this like sort of like thing I feel like they've been hinting at in his present day story of like how he's comfortable with his armor. He's had it for years. It's obviously like second nature to him. But in a fight against Black Chrysanthemum, he fumbled a little bit with his gauntlet, which should be quick slip on or just turn around and point. And that gaffy stick came more naturally to him. So I'm thinking maybe this is an episode that kind of has a little bit, if we are going to do it, with using the flashback to make him think. Yeah, I know I've said that, but look at me now. I'm very comfortable with this Tuscan garbs, who I am. Like I want to get it. It is my father's armor, but I still think there's a little bit of that conflict between who he was and who he is, and he still hasn't even merged that even in present time. Uh, I think that's a little bit of what Fennec's line of like, hey, when he's telling Fennec, he's like, some scars on the inside take longer, right? Like, it's the outside might be healed, but the inside takes more time. And I think that there's still a little bit of work being done there. So I think maybe seeing the scene happen, thinking, you know what, I felt so adamant about it, but do I really need it? And then bam, he sees Din Djarin flying around, kicking ass, season 2 premiere, Crate Dragon, and I think in a way it makes him think, hey, I need that armor to be that fully realized version of myself, that full badass bounty hunter. That's like the last step to unlocking who I am. Like I'm comfortable with who I am. I know what I want to be, but it's a lot like he says in the last in this episode 4, it's a little hard to be persuasive without the armor. So even if he's not necessarily needing it for the same reasons, he still wants the armor back. It's still his father's. He still knows the effect that it has. He kind of gets it. So I think that's how I'd like that to play out. Will we even get it? I don't know. I really don't know. They've done a lot of these mini Camino flashbacks too, and I feel like that's being set up for like final like blip flashbacks, like of like 1 or 2 minute sequences, like when he's in a daze in a fight or something in the like last 2 episodes, and he finally like reconciles like his youth or something. I don't know, but in terms of just last major flashback needed because he's been so desperate to get his armor back in this episode. But then we've seen him in episode 2 and 3 not really care too much about his armor. Like he's having this like a little. I don't want to say wishy washy, but I think his connection with his armor isn't as deep as he originally thought, and it's got to be reframed and changed in a different way that I think both the flashback and the present day can address.
I would like that to serve as a nice bridge too from like if this flashback were to take place in episode 5 and we were to have that in more the middle of the episode and we start the episode out Boba doing his stuff on Mos Espa, flashback, sees Din, and then we transition into Din being in the show in chapter 5, and I think that's the next point to talk about because that was the other of the two big things that were hinted at in this episode was the Mandalorian theme at the end of chapter 4. We get a conversation between Boba and Finnick about something very important that we've been saying this entire time is what is Boba Fett doing here with no army? He has no one. He's got like 4 bikers and 2 Gamorreans, and he's expecting everyone to be like, "Oh yeah, you're super powerful. We're gonna bow down to you." So now he's finally like, "Yeah, I have money, but I need some muscle." And
Yeah,
Finnick's like, "Well,
yeah,
money buys muscle." And then you hear the Mandalorian theme, which is pretty cool. I think it's interesting. I mean, I think you could bring in Din, but you don't. He's not the guy you're gonna pay, right? Like he owes you a favor because you did him a favor. I feel like that's more the angle. I don't know. We could get a hint at Din doing some more bounty hunting. Maybe he kind of throws himself back into that work once Grogu's gone. He's kind of trying to forget about it, move on. Does he want to associate with somebody from his past who reminds him of Grogu, like Boba or Fennec? Maybe not. Who knows? I would love to see the state of Din there and a nice little tease for Mandalorian season 3, which we're supposed to be getting at the end of this year, beginning of next year. But yeah, I mean, he should show up in this episode at least, or some type of Mandalorian should. I think it also could be a clue at maybe some other Mandalorian bounty hunters that we could be looking at here. There were members of Din's group that were the Children of the Watch that were all bounty hunters, so maybe we can get some other types of Mandalorians. Maybe Din's recruiting a whole group of Mandalorians to help Boba. That would be really sick if Boba was leading an entire group of Mandalorian bounty hunters in this fight. That would be epic. But yeah, I think I think no matter what, we should be in for maybe the first of many surprises and cameos down the stretch here as we get further into what ultimately is going to be our central conflict for the last 3 episodes of the show.
yeah. I mean, you don't like I was saying before we started this, you don't really put his whole music theme blaring in the episode and then just pop him up in a hologram next episode. That would just make me go, just like, like come on. Just if you want to use it as a cameo, do it as a cameo. But when you're gonna play his theme, it feels like he's gonna have a role to play, even if it's not as huge. I think this show has to really allow itself to have Boba take the spotlight. Boba took the spotlight away from Din in his episodes just for like a minute or two, but it's still mostly Din's show. I want Din to take away the spotlight for a minute or two in the flashback in present day, give us a little bit of update of what his state of his character is, like you said, but it still should let Boba be Boba, like take charge, take command. He's still got a war that he's prepping for. He's still got to do this and that. I might push back a little bit on the bounty hunters just because one, I don't know if Boba's I don't know, I don't think he's really got that like Mandalorian connection. Makes a really good point to Coscarese, like she's like, "Oh, yeah, him and her and Bo-Katan are like, I've heard your voice 1,000 times, you're just a clone." He's like, "I don't care. I'm not really a Mandalorian, right? You're not." He's like, "You don't deserve to wear that armor." He's like, "It's my father's. I don't care if I'm not a Mandalorian." So I don't know if I would love it if is suddenly he's just like chummy with like threw in like a bunch of Mandalorians. Um, and some of them might even be like, dude, like, where is your best guard? You've like lost more and more plates over time. Like, you look at his dad, he had like guards on his arms and his legs. Then when he was in his prime, he had like a nut protector, and that's gone now. He's losing his plates. It's like at some point he's got to upgrade his best car if he really wants to be Mandalorian. Mandalorian. Um, but I digress. I don't know if I'd love that because too we've also seen Din's closest connection to the Mandalorians is either Bo-Katan and her own thing, and there's definitely tension there with him having the dark saber, and then there's a whole other thing of like his cult, you know, the people that he grew up with. I'm forgetting what they're called. The Watch, right? They're they all like fought and let him escape in episode 3 of The Mandalorian, the very first season. But then he goes back and, all their helmets are there, they're all dead. So I don't know who's really going to be able to contact that would support him because they're dead, and who could potentially support him might want to kill him because they want the dark saber. So I think he'd be in a pretty interesting position. And so I don't know if I'd fully be on board just because I don't see how that works. But I think there's an interesting angle that you can do with Din and the Mandalorian heritage and all that. Like, yeah, like you said, maybe Din does have some hesitancy about meeting Boba because it reminds him of his past with Grogu, that he's maybe trying to just throw himself into his work and just be the nameless Mandalorian warrior once more, right? But at the same time, I think, he can give a little bit of a perspective to Boba on the armor as well. I think Boba, like I said, I think he's still got a little bit of a discrepancy between, yeah, I'm the guy with the armor. It's persuasive and all that instead of like fully having a value for it. Why is it important? It's always just been because it's his father's. But you look at someone like Din, like that is his culture, that's his identity. You look at someone like Bo Katan, that's reforged Beskar through family. Like I think this would be a pretty interesting way of having Bobo like fully integrate with his armor because he also he's getting there. He's fully realized, but I think he also needs to level up as a fighter in his armor once again to combine his Tusken Raider gaffy stick fighting with his technology that he's always had as a Mandalorian warrior. So I think that'd be pretty interesting to see. And then I think Boba could also help out Din have a little bit of perspective about like, yeah, your life has changed dramatically. Sucks to be you that you lost a kid, right? He's having a horrible life being trained by one of the greatest Jedi ever. Boo hoo, you did the right thing. But you look at Boba too. He's gone through all these ups and downs, and he's doing something totally different. And we've seen in 3 episodes, he hasn't been very good at it, right? He's finally like taking those real steps to be who he's planned on being, and he's worked through it. Maybe he threw himself into the fire, and now he's stepped out of it a little bit more understanding of where he was lacking, what he's got to do to fix up the things. Finally, has to get muscle, this and that. So maybe he can give a little advice to Din, like, hey, you can't just be that Mandalorian anymore, right? Like, once you had Grogu, that totally changed you. Maybe you do have to do something with the Mandalorian culture and way. Maybe you have to reconnect to who you are in a different way. Maybe you have to take a different path. So I think it'd be an interesting way of having both of them meet each other, gain a little bit from what they need, do some kick-ass fighting and all that, but also come up away from each other like in a little bit of a better state. Maybe he does call in Din for a favor, like, "Hey, can you be my muscle on this mission? I can pay you, but you also do owe me." But I don't know if Din, if he does come in the next episode, sticks around for 3 episodes. It feels like it's more of like an opportunity for both of them to be reevaluated, change once more. Because the thing is, as much as we want to say like Boba's had his ups and downs, oh, now Boba's back, sure. One criticism I will agree with that everyone has is like, hey, you've taken all the cool stoic warriorness of like Boba and given it to Din. That's what that became. Din personifies everything that people saw as Boba as like this. He can do anything. He can fight through anything. Yada yada yada. Now, how do you make them, like, be in the same room, both restored armors, both in prime fighting, and what do you make them each unique about? What do you let Boba show off? What do you let Din show off? Because you can't really count a dude who, like, put a little robe and then some plates together and be like, "Oh, yeah, that's the same guy on the level of a guy who's got, like, a huge chest plate of Beskar." Now it's like, okay, now they're both looking like they're back in form. Now, how do you like recapture or give some perspective to Boba? How do you prepare Din for the next season? I think that's what this episode really could be about, especially in the present day scenes.
That's why I find it really interesting that chapter 5 would be the place for Din to appear. Like, I think everybody thought he was going to show up at some point, but chapter 5 is really interesting because what's Din's place really in this story? We've seen him evolve from bounty hunter to like have a higher purpose, right? So now that his kid that he was protecting is gone, and what's his purpose now? I feel like that's what Mandalorian season 3 is about, and to tease it here in a chapter 5 seems more random than to tease it in the last episode of the season when like Boba's conquered his thing and he's like, oh, I'm getting a transmission from Din Djarin. He's like, hey, Boba, I heard you set up a crime syndicate. You need me? Let me know, whatever. Something like that seems to me where what I was originally thinking how Din would be connected, because they really want to emphasize that these are all in the same timeline for all those people who aren't keeping up with it like we are, and probably everybody watching this video is. They want to keep telling everybody this is the same timeline as The Mandalorian, not only to get more people to watch the Book of Boba Fett, but also to get other people to realize that this is kind of like Star Wars, the closest thing Star Wars has had to like an MCU style storytelling, to whatever DC's done on CW type storytelling, where we cross over through different shows, and we're gonna have Ahsoka, and we're gonna have Mandalorian season 3, and then whatever the big event is called when the whole thing ends. All of these things are being crossing over, and they want people to build that anticipation for not just Book of Boba Fett season 2, but Book of Boba Fett season 2 being the next step in the Mandalorian saga of this whole entire Mandoverse thing that they've got going on. So to me, it's really shocking that episode 5 would be his cameo appearance. And I agree. I don't really want him to show up for a long period of time, because that was a major complaint a lot of people had with season 2 of The Mandalorian. Not that I complained at all by seeing Boba Fett, Bo-Katan, Luke Skywalker, all these major players, right? But I feel like, yeah, having Din come back now, Din has been established as our go-to Mandalorian bounty hunter in canon, because he was put into canon before Boba Fett was resurrected, basically. Does he take that shine from Boba? How does he really, I think it's just going to be kind of a cameo, but I think it's going to serve as a bridge to maybe he puts Boba in touch with somebody like Grief Karga, who may get him bounty hunter connections, something like that. I think he's just going to kind of serve as a bridge. And in a way, I could see this cameo being disappointing for some, but I could also see it being bigger than expected. I really don't know what to expect out of what Din's going to do in a chapter 5 scenario, but
Yeah.
it could be really interesting, and it could be a complete letdown. I think that's just kind of the state of the Book of Boba Fett in general, is like, what are they going to do with a lot of these ideas that we've seen tossed
Yeah.
around over the
Yeah,
course
no,
of these
we
four
got an
episodes?
extreme highs in like the visuals and some of the performances, and then we've gotten like questionable choices, like you know the music in the cyberpunk repair scene, or the kid gangs on the 20 miles per hour speeders. To a degree, you could also criticize, have we depowered Boba for this episode just for narrative purposes? Like, what are we doing here? Some of that structure, some of the issues here and there. I don't know. I think, like you said, it's strange that it's 5 and it not like a 7 or an 8. Because if it's like an episode 7, you could tease him at the very end, and then 8, bring him in for like 1 or 2 pivotal scenes, set him off on his journey for Mando season 3. But it's 5, which is just a little, we're now, yeah, we're it's in the later half, right? 4 is squarely in the middle. It is I mean, it is a bridge episode for the Mandoverse. It is a bridge episode to hopefully present day focus of Book of Boba Fett and the whole warfare with the Pikes. But how does Din fit in here? First of all, how does he get here? This man doesn't have a ship. Like he's lost the Razor Crest completely, right? In the last time we saw Boba, I've seen some very interesting rumors for a ship that will fly. So I'm not going to say anything, but it gets me very excited. Um, but yeah, like how does he get here? Is he can't just be he can't be a hologram. If he's a cameo, he's got to be on Tatooine, because I don't at this point I don't see Boba leaving Tatooine. I thought this would be a little bit more like he'd pop a planet here and there. Kenobi would be the one that was all stuck to Tatooine, but no, Kenobi is the one that's gonna supposedly take us off planet in all these different directions. And Book of Boba Fett is just like, no, I'm here to fight on land in the slave one on air with all the muscle that I can't get around most espo. It's like it's very focused in that way. So he has to be on Tatooine. That would be his third trip to Tatooine, and he's always had a little bit of a change. The first time he's kind of like trying to just be that bounty hunter still, right? While he's getting closer and closer to this child. The second time around, he's here. It's just like an all-out action fest. I don't even why is he even here in the season 2 premiere? I don't even remember on Tatooine. He's just he isn't he just that his ship has so many damages, or no?
Oh,
Uh
and you're talking about Mandalorian?
Mando season 2. Why
Um,
yeah, why is he on Tatooine? Totally
isn't it that he hears about another Mandalorian there,
Right.
and that's why he's checking
That
out
that's why
Boba's
he's been
armor.
checking. Right. So he's like trying to pursue his past. Maybe he's someone who's like from the Watch who hasn't died, and then he gets that's how he meets Boba, or Boba finds him, and then that whole storyline tracks up. So he's gonna come here. It's got to be different again, but it can't be like taking over the whole stakes of the story different. It can't just be like a Bo-Katan and her mission is now the precedence. It can't be a Ahsoka where obviously you have to show off Ahsoka. It can't be a Luke who steals the whole show at the end. It's just got to be like a dude who, he's gone from hunter doing a mission to searching for his family, right? And now I feel like he's just got to be like a wandering dude who's got no purpose, no soul in him. He's trying to avoid all the responsibility of the dark saber and all that he inadvertently got. He's trying to hopefully reconnect to his past, like find some other people, but it's becoming more and more futile, right? He's trying to deal with taking off his helmet, which is a huge thing for him. But now, does he take his helmet off again, right? Now that he's gotten used to it, taking it off for the kid, is that only something he reserved for the kid? There's a lot of things about his character that could be interesting tangents. I don't know how they're gonna all fit together, and for some reason, we're getting him in the next episode, and that's not a complaint, but I don't know what they're gonna do with him that feels like, okay, that's a good role, but it's not like an overwhelming role and saves a lot for Mando season 3.
Yeah, agreed. And I think so. The line that Finnick has about hiring muscle, I think, is going to extend further than Din, and I think that could pivot us into maybe a last interesting discussion to have here before we wrap this up. And that it's the fact that this is the Mandalorian timeline. These are the same creators. This is John Favreau, who has an extreme love for original trilogy imagery and bringing original trilogy toys back to life. We've seen EV-99 in this. We've seen 8D8 actually become a real character. Like these characters, these toys that I grew up playing with, like and didn't actually play with. You just throw them aside because who wants to play with EV-99, right? Like, um, but but all these things that exist, I think it's going to be really surprising to me if we go this entire season without seeing Bosk, IG-88, Zuckuss, and 4 LOM and Dengar. Like I feel like we're gonna get at least some of those people back, if not all of them. But I mean, if I'm trying to think from the Robert Rodriguez, John Favreau perspective, right, and just what they've done throughout these 3 seasons of their shows, or mainly John Favreau shows. I mean, I can just imagine that shot of Boba standing in between all of them as they're all lined up, just like in the middle of Mos Espa Street, taking on. There's a gigantic Pike army across the way, and it's just like the 6 of them standing there, and they're like, "You have to come through us to get to Jabba's palace," because they all have a connection to it in some way. Maybe it doesn't make sense for the characters that much because they're all rivals, right? But I guess money talks in this world, and if Boba's got a lot of money, maybe they put aside their differences with Boba to see how that works out. What do you think if that possibly could happen? I mean, I personally really want Cad Bane to show up at some point, but I don't think that's on the level. I mean, we do have Dave Filoni, right? And he is directing an episode in this, maybe. But I think just in terms of John Favreau's writing style, the way he likes to pull in nostalgia, and especially something to do with the original trilogy, famous original trilogy stuff, like I feel like he's got to give life to some of these characters that he's probably wanted to since he was a little kid. And I'd be shocked if we don't see some of them show up.
I mean, for your point about just like the action shot, the hero pose shot, it's got to happen. It's gonna be like one of the most hyped things to come out of the Mandoverse if we just see all of these badass bounty hunters who were literally on stilts in Empire Strikes Back in a lot of cases, but now it can be fully realized, fully action heavy and dominant, right? Like I'd love to see IG-88 and what makes him different from an IG-11. Like, is he a lot more chaotic and frenzied with his motion? Does he like spring up and jump and do crazy stuff like he does in comics? Um, I don't know if I think a Dengar could work just because you put a head wrap on a guy, give him enough prosthetics. That's Dengar, right? Um, uh, I mean, I think we have to get Bosk just because of how much effort they put into Trandoshans, the animatronics for them. Um, there were, like, moments here and there I was like, when they're speaking in English that I was just like the first guy who spoke, I was like, it's not that great." But the second guy, I was like, "Oh, that was pretty good." Like, he rolled his tongue like a snake-like creature almost, like a lizard, and his eyes the eyes work and work is just great. I'm really enjoying that. So, yeah, it has we gotta get Bosk, right? Like, but, I mean, it just hit me. You're talking about, like, you know, could we get a Cad Bane? I'm not actually sure anymore if we do get a Cad Bane, but I think we can get a pretty interesting Filoni episode with characters that he's used because it just hits me. What's the point of all these Camino flashbacks? Like, it's such a far away part of his life. Like, yeah, it is like the original source material of his upbringing and all that, but do we see, like, some clone I don't know if we see an Omega, but do we see, like, a clone or something? Like a Rex or someone show up and he just sees himself and he's like, "Whoa." Like, that's like and it just like, I don't know, like, there's no point in spending so much of your budget to show the oceans of Camino flash for, like, 3 seconds and then see your dad's ship fly off if you're not gonna have some prequel trilogy payoff, right? And, yeah, that could still mean Cad Bane, don't get me wrong, but the emphasis on Camino makes me feel like maybe we get a clone show up, someone from the Bad Batch or Oldham. I don't think Oldham lived, but, um someone from there, someone from Filoni's Clone Wars era. I I mean, Boba doesn't seem like he hates clones. He's kinda chummy with a couple of them in his younger episodes with when he infiltrates, the Venator in his first attempt to kill Mace Windu, right? So, I maybe he'd respond better to these guys than, his little bit more aggressive fight with Casca and Bo-Katan. Who knows? It could still be Cad Bane. I think if we see a Cad Bane fight, rumor is Filoni's doing the 6th episode, so I don't know if that would make sense for a 6th episode instead of the finale. Um, who knows? It'd be weird if, like, you have, like, a final flashback duel combined with a present day duel, and it's your 6th episode and not your 7th episode. Because I feel like it's Cad Bane. You should make him, like, at least season 1's ending villain, but yeah, I mean, who knows? There's potential. It just sprung to me. I'm like, there's no point in putting Camino in this show unless you're gonna do something with, I guess, his heritage.
I'd like to see it. I just don't know where it fits in. Like, where this show has so many plot threads that have opened up, and we've closed some very abruptly, and then we've left some open that felt like they were going to be closed more abruptly than others. Who knows? I think that could be a good direction to go in for season two. Maybe after we've seen Mandalorian season three, we'll have seen Ahsoka. Maybe reintroduce Rex and Ahsoka, and then you can kind of tie it all full circle in Boba Fett. Maybe he's now reintroduced to clones and he's part of that world because Boba, as much as he has been a part of Clone Wars, but he hasn't been a major part of Clone Wars like the clones and like Ahsoka have been when you're bringing back, or the Rebels timeline when you're bringing back all these characters from the animated shows for this big finale. Boba is kind of the outlier. He's the one that doesn't really mix, and even Din at
Right.
least has the Mandalorian
Right.
heritage. Boba doesn't really fit. So how do you make him fit? Maybe in season two you could connect the clone stuff. Maybe you make Cad Bane the villain of that one and kind of do a full Clone Wars season two. You tease Cad Bane at the end of season one, maybe. Who knows? I think all that would be cool. But yeah, I think Bosk especially because of the Trandoshan stuff, maybe he's somebody they call in to help them out. It doesn't even have to be through Boba Fett, but we could see Bosk join because the Trandoshans ask for his help or pay him because he's their guy. It could be anything like that. But I think this would be they
Yeah,
would
he comes back just to help his little nephew out. He's like, all right, I'll do that little favor because I was supposed to go to your party, but I forgot.
yeah, family obligation basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be any number of things like that, but yeah, when I heard that line, I'm like, finally, okay, finally the bounty hunter stuff that we were all kind of hoping this show was about. Finally, we were having a hint at maybe getting a bunch of bounty hunters in the show if Boba's making baby pretty much a mercenary army to help fight off the Pikes. I'm sure there's a lot of people who have scores to settle with the Pikes. It'd be cool. I think it would very much surprise me at the restraint John Favreau would have had in this season to not put all these characters in, because he's and completely justifiably so, he's jumped at every opportunity he's had to put in an original trilogy character that was in a scene for half a second in these two shows so far. So I would love to see that. But I think that's it for chapter 5 predictions and speculation. Yeah, there was more to talk about this week because we liked it a lot more. So there's a lot of fun threads to throw out there. Let us know down below what you thought of some of these discussions, what you think could happen, which plot points you'd like to see, which characters you'd like to see show up, what you want to see them do with Din Djarin, and all that type of stuff. Let us know down below. And then if you haven't yet, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for Star Wars content 3 days a week. Stay tuned tomorrow, or no, not tomorrow. Yesterday will have been the comic reviews. If you haven't checked that out for High Republic 13, I believe the Galactic Bake Off Spectacular is also coming out. There's one more I'm blanking on. I think it's Dr. Aphra. Check those out. And then if you haven't checked out our spoiler review for Chapter 4, if you want to continue to talk Book of Boba Fett, those come out every single Wednesday, so you'll want to check that out. And then stay tuned for next week. We will be covering Chapter 5 and Chapter 6 predictions and speculation as well with the Book of Boba Fett. So thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.